Hi, this is Miss Lamb, here to explore The Great Gatsby through a psychoanalytic lens. The romantic relationships in the novel seem to be most suited to the psychological lens. In fact, a close examination of Tom and Daisy's relationship in comparison with the rest of the relationships in the novel reveals an important pattern. All the relationships in the novel, Gatsby and Daisy, Tom and Myrtle, Myrtle and George, and Nick and Jordan conform to the same psychological pattern of behavior grounded in a fear of intimacy, the unconscious idea that emotional connections to another person or character will result in one's own emotional destruction. This issue is so pervasive in the novel that it transforms it into a drama of dysfunctional love. For Tom Buchanan, relationships with women are merely a form of ego gratification, as opposed to opportunities for emotional intimacy. He marries Daisy to prove his social superiority, and he carries on his affair with Myrtle to prove to all men around him that he is masculine enough to have gotten the girl. In contrast, though Daisy didn't initially love Tom, remember she tried to call the wedding off, she soon falls deeply in love with him, despite knowing about his ongoing infidelity. Though this makes little sense logically, it fits with known psychological patterns. According to psychoanalysis, fear of intimacy with others usually represents fear of intimacy with oneself. Because close personal relationships can bring up old traumas and reveal parts of our identity that we don't want to deal with, the best way to avoid self-awareness is to avoid close relationships. However, we also have an unconscious need to play out repressed issues, especially through romantic relationships. For example, if someone had a parent who was abusive or neglectful, they would seek a partner with similar qualities, unconsciously hoping to have their needs for love from their parent met. But a partner with those qualities will likely not meet those needs. The person will then develop a low self-esteem from a lifetime of unmet needs and will begin to unconsciously believe that they don't deserve to have their needs met, perhaps because they are not good enough. Because these thoughts remain repressed, the person can never deal with them appropriately. For both Tom and Daisy, fear of intimacy is related to low self-esteem. Tom feels a need to show off his wealth and conquests when he brags about his house and stables to Nick, when he shows Myrtle off to all the men, and when he taunts George Wilson. If he was as self-confident as he pretended to be, he wouldn't have needed to try so hard. Daisy's low self-esteem is highlighted by her relationship with Tom. The fact that she loves a man who is openly unfaithful to her suggests that she holds an unconscious belief that she doesn't deserve better. Her insecurity is also portrayed through her need for reassurance from others that her life is as perfect as she pretends it is. This fear of intimacy is apparent in their relationships with others as well. Neither Tom nor Daisy spends a lot of time with Pammy. When Daisy is around her child, she speaks in an artificial way, as if she needs others to see that she is a devoted mother. They also don't form particularly close relationships with either Nick or Jordan, and Nick observes that they move frequently, likely because they don't remain in any one place long enough to become too close with anyone. It's not surprising then that Tom and Myrtle's relationship also lacks intimacy. Tom remains with Myrtle to avoid being close to Daisy. He mistreats her, lies to her, and casually breaks her nose when she steps out of line. The only justification for Tom's behavior is Myrtle's lack of concern for him. For Myrtle, Tom is simply a way out of her dull life with George. The romance between Nick and Jordan reveals a fear of intimacy as well. Nick is initially attracted to Jordan's emotional distance, using words like impersonal, cool, and contemptuous to describe the features that he likes about her. As soon as her life becomes complicated, however, after Myrtle's death, Nick becomes uninterested in Jordan and ends their relationship over the phone, never actually discussing the difficult event they had experienced together. Though Daisy and Gatsby's relationship might appear to be different than the others in the novel, a close examination reveals that it's actually quite similar. Daisy doesn't seem to desire an emotionally intimate connection with Gatsby either. As soon as she realizes that he can't reinforce her social status, she moves away from him and severs their relationship. In fact, Gatsby is strikingly similar to Myrtle in the way he is used by the Buchanans. Just as Tom uses Myrtle to avoid emotional problems in his marriage, Daisy uses Gatsby as a distraction from her issues with the marriage. As long as Daisy has Gatsby, she can tell herself that she doesn't need Tom, allowing her to continue tolerating his affairs. Her relationship with Gatsby thus becomes a psychological defense. She can stay tied to both Tom and Gatsby without forming an emotional connection to either one. Given that Gatsby and Myrtle are merely psychological distractions in the Buchanan marriage, it's symbolically significant that Tom and Daisy, in effect, kill each other's lovers. Though Daisy only accidentally kills Myrtle, Tom intentionally sends an armed George Wilson to Gatsby's house with no warning. And the fact that Daisy lets Gatsby take the blame for Myrtle's death without a second thought reveals that he was simply a pawn for her, and that once he was no longer socially relevant, he became expendable. The question that remains is how Gatsby displays a fear of intimacy when he seems to be singularly devoted to his relationship with Daisy. However, a closer look at his motivations reveals that his intentions are not as simple as they seem. Long before he knew Daisy, Jimmy Gatz had his sights set on social advancement. An unhappy and perhaps traumatic childhood led him to reject his parents and reinvent himself as Jay Gatsby, a form of denial that let him repress the memory of his real past. And his claim that he inherited his money from dead parents, an unconscious desire to kill the parents who didn't meet his needs. When Gatsby meets Daisy, she becomes a symbol of the emotional avoidance that he desires. He idealizes her as the perfect woman, one who could do no wrong. He believes that their relationship is indestructible and that Daisy remains the same despite the passage of time. But you can't form an emotional attachment to an idea. In fact, by idealizing Daisy, Gatsby insulates himself from forming relationships with other women while also ensuring that they will never really be able to connect. So while Daisy and Gatsby may have experienced some level of an emotional connection, what they felt for each other was a means of avoiding feeling the disturbing parts of their lives that they wanted to keep repressed. Gatsby's unhappy childhood, Daisy's dysfunctional marriage, and their combined fear of intimacy. A psychoanalytic lens turns a story of passionate romance gone wrong into a twisted tale of unresolved psychological conflicts repeatedly played out in dysfunctional relationships. Gatsby famously says, "Can't repeat the past? Why, of course you can," perhaps reinforcing the psychoanalytic premise that repression of psychological traumas condemns us to experience them over and over in our romantic relationships.